Caddis Maximus here again. This time reviewing the Harbor Freight Quantum QFL 588, 588 lumen, 4 or quad AAA battery, zoom or adjustable focus flashlight. Now I had made fun of the earlier 120 lumen light just because it was advertising all of the packages a domed lens. Funnily enough, or strangely enough, the 588 lumen doesn't advertise a domed lens at all, though it does talk about the adjustable focus, and it has what I consider a true domed lens, which is a real lens. You can see how it distorts the image there, and this is a big deal because you actually need a real lens, not a flat piece of glass or plastic or whatever, to actually be able to focus the beam. And so one real nice aspect, say versus how mag lights used to work, is they would just move the reflector in or out from the bulb, and it would allow the beam to focus. But doing that causes kind of hot spots where it would be like a bright ring and kind of dark in the middle. The really nice thing about lens flashlights like this, and even this Dorsey we're compared to, is more like a true even floodlight. So when you turn it on, I'll do a quick demonstration here. There we go. We can see that the light is relatively even, like a true floodlight. And that's kind of a nice deal. When you're walking, it's kind of nice to have it in the floodlight, or when you're hiking, and it gives you a nice even illumination over a large area. And then, of course, it allows you to zoom, and what that does is move the lens away and causes it to focus, as you can see here. Another thing that this does is has 3 modes. It seems almost all these flashlights, the bigger ones, usually have this universal high, medium, and then strobe. Now you can see how the camera was flickering. It may be more so when I do it this way. So there we go. So bright, it's fine. Medium or half power, what it's actually doing is it's cutting off the bulb. It's running it at 50% output, but instead of just lowering the voltage to 50%, it's actually running it at full brightness, but turning it on and off probably 30 to 60 times a second, since it interferes with the camera, and the camera is only running, in this case, 30 frames a second. I don't do 60 frame a second videos because it doubles the video file size, and they become prohibitively large for me to upload and edit. The minimal editing that I do. If it was turning on and off at 200 or 500 times a second, there wouldn't be any camera flicker. It would just be too fast. So that's how I know it's somewhere at the lower end. But that's what it's doing. It's running a square wave to it and just simply turning it on and off rapidly. The zoom function is just a slide function like so, and it has like a well-greased dielectric grease O-ring, so it has this kind of smooth motion, and when you hit the bottom, it kind of it feels like a detent. But it kind of wants to stay at the bottom, and then you just slide it in and out to adjust your focus. They did put a lot of grease on that, and sometimes, as you can see here, a bit of the grease ends up there, so you might get a little bit of greasy hands until it gets broken in. They do have this interesting laser etching there, zoom, I don't know, in and at 5 meters and then out, and then an equivalent zoom function, which is kind of funny. Light knurling, but it seems okay, and a well-recessed power button. One thing I was noticing is that none of these Harbor Freights, and we're going to compare this to the 120 lumen and even the little 60 lumen, but none of these have a provision for lanyards. And I was noticing that because I was going to go compare it to this Lux Pro LP600, which is a 600 lumen flashlight, so almost exactly the same as the Harbor Freight. It only does a spot, so we'll be able to compare it in its focus mode. But this Lux Pro has a provision for a lanyard, which I really like. And also it has this rubber overmolding, which provides a lot more grip than just some lightly knurled aluminum. And I'll have to point that out, or I will point that out as well. As far as size comparison, even though this uses 4 AAAs instead of 3, it's almost exactly the same size as the 120 lumen. As a matter of fact, it's just a little bit shorter, but the barrel has just a little bit more diameter to it. But it is nearly the same size. It is obviously heavier because more batteries, and there's a bit more aluminum up in front, as well as the heavy solid acrylic lens. It's a bit more expensive. I think this one's like $15 or something right around there. But it's generally the one I would recommend if you can deal with the extra batteries that it uses. It's really, a lot brighter than the 120 lumen, obviously. About 5 times brighter, and I think you're going to ultimately be happier with this flashlight and its brightness. One thing to be said is that these simple flashlights with the flat lenses, it's much easier to replace the lens when it gets scratched. Only really nice ones include scratch-resistant glass. The deal with these focusable flashlights is this lens tends to get scratched pretty easily, and then it really starts to get beat up after a while, and then you really notice it really interferes with the beam pattern. Just kind of makes it like a torch type of light. Just like car headlights with frosty lenses, it just ends up scattering all the light, and you kind of really lose all the benefits of the lens. And that's one thing I wanted to point out, is if this kind of light with the lens really beats around in a backpack or something, it's going to impact its illumination performance. But aside from that note, these are pretty nice, because it's nice to have the option to flood and then be able to focus it now down to a nice tight beam. And of course, even nowadays, compared to even my very first flashlight review, which is probably 6 months or a year ago, I was looking online. You can get some crazy 10,000 lumen flashlights, just amazingly bright, chock with like 6 18650 lithium-ion cells. It's pretty amazing. So, but for the price range, this Harbor Freight's pretty competitive. And I'm going to compare it once again to the Lux Pro 600 lumen. We also have this Dorsey, which is can be focused as well. It's a much funkier flashlight because you have to twist the back to get it to turn on. I just am using it as a one comparison of a focusable flashlight. The one thing about the Dorsey too is that it uses an O-ring, which I pulled out of this one. You actually unscrew it and screw it back in, kind of like a mag light, except for it still has the lens. The one advantage to this style is it allows you to focus right down to perfect. And the easiest way to say perfect is you can focus it to where you can see the shape of the printing of the elements, and the LED is actually projecting through the lens, and you'll see that when I do the outside test. It's kind of neat. And I'm trying to keep it reasonable. We have other focusing flashlights. I was going to compare it to this AT-AK, but this thing uses 9 AA batteries. It's a much more powerful 1,000 lumen flashlight, and I thought there's not a big reason, even though it works in a similar fashion with a similar lens. It's just so bright, there's no real point to it, and it's huge. This flashlight could fit inside this one. But there are huge flashlights, and nothing really beats the lithium-ion ones. I have this one. They make these where it's one unit and the big lithium-ion cell pack fits inside, but I kind of like these because they're a little cheaper when you get the separate, or the battery pack as a separate unit. And if you're actually doing a bit of hiking, you can offset the weight of the batteries in your pocket so that you're only carrying just the light unit itself. But this thing's average. This thing's like 2,000 lumens, and this wouldn't be a fair comparison. Surprisingly enough, this little Securiting brand actually does use real glass, so much more scratch resistant. Anyway, let's take a quick look inside here. The one thing about these zoom lights is there's some kind of special detent. And I've taken the lenses off, but they never seem to go back on or hold as securely after the initial time that they've been put on, so I'm not going to pull this lens all the way off. But we'll take just a quick look inside. It does have O-rings obviously in the front. These zoom, I've read a few forum posts, and the one issue people have really had with these slide zoom flashlights is the O-ring has to be sized so there's not too much friction for the zoom to be able to reasonably work the zoom. However, it means a bit less. It's rain resistant, but it's not a flashlight that you can, take diving with you or something like that. And then it does use a pack where 4 AAA batteries, or a carousel, or a battery cartridge, and they do indeed use a spring, not just regular solder pads down in there, which I also appreciate. And then their traditional kind of 12-volt lighter end there. One thing that was posted in some of the comments is, will the 3 AAA flashlights accept an 18650? And the voltage would work because they're an lithium-ion battery tends to be 3.6 volts, and they run those batteries in series, so those flashlights are 4.5 volts when they have 3 AAA batteries. But when the alkalines run low, they can get below 3.6 volts. So the voltage will work with the lithium-ion, but lithium-ion battery, the 18650s, are about a ½ inch too long, and they're smaller in diameter. It's really the fact that they're a ½ inch too long is why you can't just pop an 18650 into a 3 AAA battery flashlight. It may work in a 4 AA battery flashlight, or excuse me, a 3 AA battery flashlight, because the AA's are a bit longer and there may just be enough spring room. But you would want to use a protected cell, because obviously a flashlight designed for disposable batteries will run it down dead. And you would need a protected cell, otherwise it could be a dangerous situation. Anyway, let's go outside and compare these. Alright, here we go. It's a little windy, so sorry about the wind noise. We're only about 20 to 25 feet away from a red brick wall, and we'll just start off with the Quantum 60 lumen. Then we'll move up to the Quantum 120 lumen that I just reviewed, and we can see how much brighter it is. And now we'll go to the 588 lumen, or I'll just call it the 600 lumen Harbor Freight. And this is going to be in floodlight mode starting off. As we can see, it really just lights up this entire area. It's really pretty nice having that floodlight and that nice even. You can see the focus of the 120 lumen, but this floodlight's pretty amazing. Now if we zoom in, that just does the focus. It's really pretty smooth, as you can see. Now when it's focused, you can just see how much brighter it is. It really is like 5 times brighter than the 120 lumen. Now we'll go ahead and compare against the LX Pro. I think that's what it's called. Here it is. It's the, if we can get that in the camera, there we go, the Lux Pro LX 600. This only has a focus beam, so we'll go and put that into its focus. And you can see that the Lux Pro 600, just about the same brightness. You can see its beam over the top of the Harbor Freight, just because the Harbor Freight doesn't focus quite as tight as the LX Pro, but it really is about 600 lumens. We'll put that back out into its zoomed mode. Now we'll go against that Dorsey that I was talking about. It's the other lens flashlight. So now we have it in its full floodlight mode, and then here's the Dorsey. And we'll go and cross it over. There's the Dorsey, and then there's the Harbor Freight. And really just about the same lumens. Now, here's what I was talking about, the zoom function. So here's the Harbor Freight zoomed all the way in. We'll turn on the Dorsey, and we'll start to focus the Dorsey down. And we can see that I have a blue wall up above the bricks. But the one thing about the Dorsey that I appreciate is that you can focus it right to where it gets perfect. And the camera's exposure isn't really showing it, but you can actually see it's a little bit square on the Harbor Freight here, but on this Dorsey, you can just focus it down to this super bright square. Just almost no light is going anywhere else except for that square, and it really concentrates it. So that's the one thing I was going to mention about the Harbor Freight, put that in its zoomed out mode, is the fact that the Harbor Freight could zoom just a little bit tighter, and you could get even a stronger beam. And so that would be one of my criticisms. Otherwise, it really is a nice bright flashlight. In this floodlight mode, you could easily be hiking around and you would have no problem seeing everything on the trail. It's awesome. And then if you need to spot something, that little zoom is actually quite handy. All right, we'll see you back inside. All right, we're back inside. So as you can see, this flashlight is pretty darn bright. To tell you the truth, it's probably the one that I recommend. The weight isn't too much, even with 4 AAA batteries. And it really is just so much brighter than the 120 lumen, and it's really not very much more money. And I have to admit, I mean, really, these lens flashlights, that floodlight is just like an even disc of light. Really handy. Really just would be, especially if you do hiking or side of the road repairs, quickly you'll see how that even disc of light comes into its own. It's a true floodlight and illuminates this the whole area evenly, and you'll find that that really is nice. And then to be able to just to quickly pull it out and have a nice focused beam. I've always really liked those kind of lights, or these kind of lights. The only thing I don't know is if when it's on low power, if it really is just half power or if it's quarter power. You would need, maybe a multimeter might do that, and at some point I'll try testing that. But they do advertise 3 hours and 24 minutes up to, that's to the minute. I don't really know if you're going to get that much. They don't say if that's with just their normal premium AAA batteries like the Thunderbolt Magnums that they come with, or if that's like with lithium-based AAA or lithium disposable batteries or anything like that. Otherwise, it really is a great light. I think they're all kind of nice for the price. That's why I have all three of them. And of course, that big stick lithium ion. The one I won't recommend is the rechargeable lithium ion. That's the compact version, even though it's pretty bright and it's some people may like it, and that would be fine. But the fact that the battery is not replaceable, I did a review on it quite a while ago, but the non-replaceable battery pretty much did it for me. And so if I'm going to do that, I'll just use rechargeable batteries in these. Use some Eneloops. And modern, especially the low self-discharge nickel metal hydride batteries, you have to look for them. The Eneloop is just a brand that's always been low self-discharge. The new ones that you would find in the store now are the second generation low self-discharge nickel metal hydrides, and they're the most competitive battery made next to lithium ion, because those Eneloops are just amazing. They can be recharged, you know, a couple thousand times, and they have a lot of capacity. The one thing about alkaline batteries is they're like lead acid, which means that the harder that you use them, the more quickly you suck them down, the harder that you're running them, they disproportionately sacrifice their capacity. An alkaline running at low power, say on this little flashlight, if you had a setting on this big light which made it a 60 lumen mode, like this little one, you would find that even though it has only twice as many batteries, 4 AAAs, excuse me, versus 2 AAAs, that this flashlight could last up to 3 times longer at 60 lumens than this does, because this is running 2 batteries much harder than 60 lumens would be hitting 4 batteries. And it is a dirty secret. You're really not getting all you bargain for, especially out of high drain devices, out alkaline batteries. That's why remote control cars and high power flashlights notoriously suck them down, because the alkaline battery, which under optimal conditions, even a AAA could be 1,500 milliamp hours. They could really be high capacity. It's only when you discharge them over many hours. So I suspect even Sanyo Eneloops, even the 1,000 milliamp or 1 amp hour ones, will still last longer, because nickel metal hydride doesn't have that effect. You can run them down in 5 minutes and they'll still give you their 1,000 milliamp hours. Anyway, that should end my review series of these 3 little disposable battery, AAA disposable battery flashlights from Harbor Freight. And it's kind of neat that they have this, where they have 2 AAA, 3 AAA, and 4 AAA versions. And to tell you the truth, you can get all 3 of these for like around 40 bucks or something. And versus a Streamlight, you can spend $40 and get one okay stream, or actually a pretty nice Streamlight. But you're not going to get 3 different lights like this, which is kind of convenient. So even as a set for 40 bucks, Harbor Freight should even do a little package and sell them for a little bit less. That would be great to have all 3 as a set. That way you have one for the car, one for around home, and then a nice one you take hiking or camping or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to end the review there and thank everybody who subscribed, both old and new. And if you haven't subscribed and you're watching the Catus Maximus channel, please do support the Catus Maximus channel by subscribing. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.